Hi everyone, it's Miss Haley again. Welcome back to geometry. For today's video, I will be going over the 7.1.1 study guide. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so in today's video, we're learning about the midpoint formula. Okay, so first off, let's figure out what a midpoint is. The midpoint of a segment is the point halfway between its two endpoints. If you remember way back in the first quarter, we talked about line segments that look like this and they have two endpoints. The midpoint is the segment right in between, so that would be our midpoint. That makes these two segments congruent. So some of you might remember that, some of you don't. Either way, that's what a midpoint is. Let's go ahead and move on. Alright, so here we go. So the endpoints of a segment are 10, 0, and 20, 0. How do you know it's a horizontal segment? So if we think about it, let's kind of draw this out if you can't picture it in your head. Let's say that this is 10 on the x-axis and then this is 20. So it looks like we have a segment whose endpoints are at 10, 0 and at 20, 0. How do we know it's a horizontal segment? Well, it looks like it didn't go up and down, right? They both have the same y value. So that's going to be my answer. The endpoints have the same y value. If they didn't have the same y value, one would be higher than the other, right? And so it wouldn't be perfectly horizontal. But since they do have the same y value, it's a perfectly left to right kind of line segment. All right, so let's see. Okay, so the x-coordinate in the midpoint, the x-coordinate is the average of the x-coordinates of the endpoints, and then the y-coordinate of the midpoint is the average of the, is the same y-coordinates of the endpoints. So if we have a perfectly horizontal line like we did before, when we find the midpoint right here, the y value is going to be the exact same as those two original endpoints, but the x-coordinate is going to be like the average right in the middle between those two endpoints, okay? So let's practice making a midpoint, okay? So for the x-coordinate, erase that. So for the x-coordinate, remember we have to find the average, right? So to find the average, we add the two x-coordinates, that's 0 and 20. So if we add those together and divide by 2, 0 plus 20 is just 20, so we have that in the numerator, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So I know my average of my two endpoints for the x value is 10, so that's going to be the x-coordinate of my midpoint. And then for my y-coordinate, since I know that this is a horizontal segment, it's just the same y-coordinate. So my y-coordinate is still going to be 0, just like the two endpoints. All right, let's look at the second one. So we know it's a horizontal line because they have the same y value, right? So let's find the x-coordinate for the midpoint. Okay, so again, I'm going to add the two x values, which are -10 and 20, and divide by 2 to find the average. -10 plus 20 is just 10, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I know that the x value of my midpoint is 5. And then what's the y value for my midpoint? Since it's a horizontal line segment, it's just going to be the same y value, which is 0. So that's the midpoint for a horizontal segment, okay? Now let's think about vertical segments. What would a vertical segment look like? The endpoints of a segment here are 0, 10, 0, 20. So let's go ahead and draw that again. All right, so let's say that this is 10 and this is 20 on my graph. So it says that 0, 10 is one of my points. That's right here. And then 0, 20. That's one of my points again. How do I know that that's a vertical line segment? Well, one segment isn't more left or right than the other. They both have this same x value. So that makes it exactly vertical. If it was like slanted, if one had a different x value than the other, it would look like that and it wouldn't be perfectly vertical, right? So they'd have to have the same x value. So the endpoints have the same x value. Hopefully you can read that. I know my handwriting on this is not very good. All right, let's move on to the next page. Here we go. Okay, so we had that chart for the horizontal segment. Now let's make those rules for the vertical segments. All right. So if we want to find the x-coordinate, the x-coordinate is going to be the same for the endpoints as it is for the midpoint. All right. And if we want to find the y-coordinate, we have to find the average of the y-coordinates at the endpoints. Okay. So it's just flipped from finding a horizontal segment. Okay. So if I have endpoints at 0, 0, and 0, 20, I know that it's a vertical segment because it has the same x values. So if my x value is going to be the same as my endpoint, so the x value is just 0 for my endpoint. Now I want to find my y value for my midpoint. So I need to take the average of those two endpoint y values. So 0 plus 20 divided by 2. 0 plus 20 is 20 divided by 2 is 10. So the y value of my midpoint is 10. So that means my midpoint of those two endpoints is 0, 10. All right, let's do this one. I know this is a vertical segment because the two endpoints have the same x value. So what's the x value for my midpoint? It's 0 as well. Now I just need to find my y value by finding the average of the two y values for my endpoints. So negative 10 plus 20 all divided by 2. Negative 10 plus 20 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my midpoint for those two endpoints is 0, 5. And that's, again, for vertical segments only. Okay. All right. The endpoints of a segment are 10, 3, and 20, 17. How do you know it's diagonal? All right, let's think about it. Let's just do a little bit of a quick sketch. So 10 over and 3 up. Let's say that's about there. That's my first point. Okay. All right, and then 2017. So further to the right, further up. How do I know that it's diagonal? How do I know that it has to be diagonal? Well, they have different x and y values. Alright, so if I have a diagonal segment, how do I figure out the midpoint? If I want to find the x-coordinate, then I find the average of the x-coordinates of the endpoints. If I want to find the y-coordinate for the midpoint, I want to find the average of the y-coordinates of the endpoints. So this brings us to what's called the midpoint formula that we can use for any kind of segment, diagonal, vertical, or horizontal, okay? So for the midpoint, you just take the average of the x values and the y values, and that's your midpoint. Okay, so when we're talking about x1 and y1, you can see those in my formula, right? x1 and y1, that's my first point. Okay, and then x2 and y2, that's my second point. Okay, so x1 plus x2 divided by 2, that's when you add the two x coordinates and divide by 2. That's the average of the x coordinates. When we take y1 plus y2 and divide that by 2, that's the average of the y coordinates. Okay. So let's get some practice with this, and then we'll be done for the day. Find the midpoint of each segment. All right, so if I want to find the midpoint, I have to find the average of the x values and the average of the y values. Let's start with the x values. I'm going to do it over here so I have some more room. So if I want to find the average of the x values, I take x1, which is 0, and x2, which is negative 8, and divide by 2. Okay, what is 0 plus negative 8? That's negative 8. And negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. So I know the x value for my midpoint is negative 4. Now let's find the average of the y-coordinates to find the y-coordinate for my midpoint. So I take my two y values, y1 is 0, y2 is 6, and divide by 2. 0 plus 6 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my midpoint in this case is negative 4, 3. Go ahead and pause this video and try to do number 2 on your own. I'm going to go ahead and get started on it right now. First, I want to find the endpoints of the midpoint for my x-coordinate. So I take x1 plus x2 divided by 2. Negative 1 plus 3 is positive 2 divided by 2 equals 1. So my midpoint is 1 something. Now I'm going to take my y values to find the midpoint for my y. So I'm going to add 7 plus negative 3 divided by 2. So 7 plus negative 3 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Sorry, my handwriting's so bad today. I don't know what's going on. Alright, so there's my midpoint for number 2. So that concludes today's video. I hope that helped. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. I hope you guys are doing well with Apex. It's almost the end of the school year, but keep pushing through. All the stuff that you're learning now is going to be super useful in whatever math class you're taking next year. So keep working hard. Good luck on your quiz, and email me if you have any questions. Have a great day.